What's up guys, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. My husband and I paid off over $200,000 of debt over the last 3.5 years, and I thought it was time to make a video about the biggest game-changing things we did to pay off that amount of debt in that amount of time. These tips are going to range from really practical to really theoretical, so I'm just going to give you all my best ones. Let's get into it. First of all, when we decided to finally tackle all our debt, it was really hard to make that shift from just accumulating debt to paying off debt, and it was even harder to believe that we could actually pay off over $200,000 of debt in our lifetime. So my number one tip when you're staring down a huge pile of debt is you just have to suspend disbelief. Even if you think it's impossible, this is an impossible financial situation, I will die with this debt. If you want to get out of debt, you have to suspend that way of thinking and just start thinking this is possible. I don't know how, when, what, I don't know any of it. I don't know anything, but I know that I can pay off debt in this lifetime and even in this decade. So right off the bat, that's a huge one. Now, the second one is a way more practical tip, and that is you need to do a zero-based budget. And if you hear budget and you're like, click, I don't want to watch this video anymore. Like, I get it. I hated budgeting and it stressed me out, and every month it didn't work and we felt like we were failing, and it was such a negative experience for a long time until we started doing zero-based budgeting. And zero-based budgeting is when you take all of your income that you're going to receive for the month, you estimate, how much you're gonna be paid in that month, and you put together a budget before the month starts with all that income allocated into categories. So even if it's some that's going into savings, or some that's going to debt payoff, or whatever's going to groceries or rent or gas, or every category under the sun, you allocate that income. And if there's any left over, which wouldn't that be nice, you allocate that as well. After you've already allocated all your minimum payments and your bills and everything, you make sure every dollar has a job. Every dollar has a place in your budget before the month starts. That way, when you get paid this lump sum of money, you're not like, maybe I'll just spend it on this. I don't know, maybe I can afford it. I'm not really worrying about it. And you're just in the dark with your spending. And that just never worked for us until we started doing a zero-based budget and we knew exactly where every dollar of our income was going for the month before the month started. It was such a game-changing moment. And obviously, while you're in debt payoff mode, any extra dollar in your budget is going to be put into the debt payoff category so you can pay off that debt as fast as possible. But even budgeting that extra, like saying, okay, my minimum payments are $1,500 a month, but I expect to have an extra $300 at the end of the month after all my bills are paid, all our groceries are paid for, everything. So instead of putting $1,500 in the debt category, you put $1,800 and you have that $300 extra in there, and you just make it like it's a bill, and you had that plan set ahead of time, because if you don't, I guarantee you that money's just gonna get spent on something else. Oh, I wanna go to sushi. Oh, I wanna go, whatever it is, whatever your thing is that you like to spend money on, it will be gone. And especially if you're in spending mode and debt accumulation mode, it's just so important to allocate this money. And one of the great things about a zero-based budget is it gives you permission to spend in categories that you care about too. So let's say, for example, you love going to sushi, and so you wanna budget $100 a month for sushi, and that's something that's important to you. You put that in the budget. Just because you're paying off debt doesn't mean you can't do anything fun or anything for yourself, but everything needs to be planned out before the month starts. Now, the other part of zero-based budgeting that's really important, or even if you're not doing zero-based budgeting, just budgeting in general, is you need to have accountability. This is tip number 3. When you're doing a budget, you need to have an expected or projected column where you put in all your numbers of where your income's gonna go before the month starts, and then you need to actually track the numbers and put that in an actual column right next to it. If you don't do a projected versus an actual in your budget and follow throughout the month and put in what you actually spent that money on and track that, then you're gonna have no idea if your budget worked. Essentially, a budget is just a list of all your bills if you don't actually track it and put those numbers in and hold yourself accountable. And look, where did I go over? Where was I under? Do we need to up this category? Did I overspend? How did we do? Did our income go where we planned it to go? Having that accountability with yourself and tracking that, you'll learn your spending habits. You'll learn where you tend to overspend. For me, it was Target. I would always overspend in Target. And so one thing I did is I shifted to not going into Target anymore. I didn't go into Target like unless it was an absolute necessity for almost 2 years. And part of this was because of the pandemic, but I started doing pickup wherever I could, like any store, but particularly Target. I started doing pickup, and that way I wasn't impulse buying. I wasn't looking around while I was there and seeing the next like new seasonal thing or whatever like thing would catch my eye. I had pre-planned with my list what I needed. I went and did an online purchase for pickup, and then I just went and picked up my things and never stepped foot in a store. So keep yourself accountable. If you're doing a budget, which you need to be doing, if you're paying off debt, you need to have your budgeted versus actual and hold yourself accountable to see if you're actually following through with your plan for your money, and if you're not, make adjustments. My next major tip for debt payoff is have an emergency fund, because emergencies are going to come up. And that was one of the biggest things we would accidentally spend money on and put stuff on a credit card for before we started paying off debt, was for emergencies. We needed a new hot water heater. We needed a new washer or dryer. Like, things in our house broke and we needed to replace them, and we just didn't have the cash set aside. So we put it on a credit card that had like a 24% interest rate, and it was ridiculous. So having an emergency fund is so crucial no matter what point you are on your financial journey. But if you're in debt payoff mode, you're at like step 1 of your financial journey. And so you definitely need to get an emergency fund. Now, it may start off smaller and you may build it up over time, but emergency funds are non-negotiable. And this is money you have for, you know, whether it's 1 month of expenses or 3 months of expenses or a set amount like $2,000, whatever you set for your goal, you have to save that up before you go hard on your debt payoff, because an emergency is going to come up, and the last thing you want to do is to have to stop paying off debt, or even worse, miss a payment and be late because you don't have enough money to pay for the emergency and to pay all your bills and all your debts and everything. And like, really, the most demotivating thing in debt payoff is when you're trying to pay off a credit card and then you charge something back on the credit card and you just are treading water. It's so frustrating. And so you really, like, if you have an emergency fund, that money can pay for whatever comes up, and then you build it back up after you pay for the emergency, and you are still able to go forward with your debt payoff, and you don't have to incur new debt. So you're not treading water, you're able to keep going and pay for that emergency. Obviously, if you have a big hit to your emergency fund, you might have to pause your extra debt payments for however long it takes to replenish that emergency fund, because once you deplete it, you have to replenish it. But no matter what, non-negotiable emergency fund is a must. And finally, last tip, which was such a game changer for us, is you have to put everything on paper and track it. So at the beginning, you need to write down all your debts, you need to write down all the interest rates, you need to write down all the balances, all the minimum payments, what the payment terms are, all the details about all your debt. And then from there, you know, you make a plan on how you're going to pay it off. And as you make payments, each payment that you make, you track it somewhere. Because if you're not tracking it, you're going to get demotivated. You're going to think you're just throwing money onto a bottomless pit and you're not going to see any progress. But if you're tracking it in something that's visual, or a spreadsheet that has something like a chart, like a progress chart on it or something like that, or one of those fill-in trackers if you're not a computer person, something that you can see the progress you're making and see that amount of debt get smaller and smaller and smaller. Some people even put them on their fridge, something where you can see it often and keep it top of mind. Other people don't want to see it too much, but no matter where you keep it, you need to be tracking all your debts and all the payments that you're making, because it's so important to track every single dollar, and seeing that progress month after month after month, and seeing that percent of debt left to pay going down is so motivating and so exciting. And when you hit those milestones of, you know, 25% paid off and 50% paid off, like, it just feels so good, especially if you have a long debt payoff journey like we did. Like, you can't white knuckle it for 3.5 years. If it's gonna take you 3 to 6 months to pay off your debt, sure, like, maybe you don't need to do all that, but I think it definitely would still help you. But maybe you could just push through and get everything paid off. But if you're gonna be at this for 1, 2, 3+ years, you have to track it, you have to watch your progress, and that's what's gonna really keep you going during that process. If you're interested in the debt trackers that we used during our debt-free journey, we had a digital spreadsheet that we used, and it had a debt payoff like pie chart that showed the progress, and that is an instant download to Google Sheets, and it comes with a detailed video tutorial. And then also we had some handwritten color-in trackers that we used at different parts of our debt-free journey if you're more of like a hand tracking person. And we actually did both of them together. So whatever works for you, I will link those in the video description if you want to check them out, but get some sort of system in place and track your progress. That is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed these tips. If you have any more major tips for debt payoff, put it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.